Sailor Moon is pretty much the quintessential magical girl series, and Sailor Moon herself is something of an iconic figure. Did you know that in 2022, Paris Hilton dressed as Sailor Moon for Halloween, and it made a bunch of headlines for some reason? I also have this photo of Pedro Pascal with the crescent moon wand that someone posted to the internet in 2014. It is saved to my desktop at all times. It doesn't have a whole lot to do with this video, but I wanted to share it with you. Chances are, if you're familiar with Sailor Moon, you also recognize this guy. I mean, not Paris Hilton's husband, Carter something or other. No, I mean Tuxedo Mask. Also known as Mamoru, also known as Darien, also known as Prince Endymion, and also kind of the Moonlight Knight sometimes, and then later known as King Endymion. Arguably, the story of Sailor Moon isn't his story, so despite being integral to the overall narrative, he's often relegated to more of a love interest or a supporting side character. Sort of like the relationship between Paris Hilton and Carter something or other. So what's Tuxedo Mask's whole deal? Well, in his past life, he was Endymion, the Prince of Earth, and Naoko Takeuchi says that he essentially takes the place of having a Sailor Earth, but he himself is not a sailor soldier. But I know, without even checking, that there are dozens, if not hundreds, of fanfics out there about Endymion or Darien having a sister, and she is Sailor Earth. Bonus points if her name is Terra. For Sailor Moon and the Sailor Senshi, or Sailor Scouts, or Sailor Guardians, whatever you want to call them, for them to turn from their civilian forms into their magical girl forms, they each get a transformation sequence. I love the transformation sequences. Like, if I could just take all of that and distill it down into a glittery liquid, I would inject it directly into my veins. I think this visual imprinted itself on every little girl who watched it. Like, collectively, without discussion, we all just decided, yes, I too would like to glow and twirl and be encased by ribbons and lightning and fire and not really bubbles, though. I do love Sailor Mercury, but I feel like nobody would proactively choose bubbles when there was like any other option. Even whatever Venus has going on, I would pick that over bubbles. Every major iteration of Sailor Moon has the transformation sequence. It is mandatory. There's the original Sailor Moon manga, the 90s anime, Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon, and Sailor Moon Crystal. So this leads to a very important question. Does Tuxedo Mask have a transformation sequence? Yes, he has 4. If you just watched the Sailor Moon dub as a kid, or you didn't have an unhealthy obsession with the series like some people, you may have completely forgotten or just be fully unaware of the different times that Tuxedo Mask has transformed, because each of the 4 major iterations of Sailor Moon that I mentioned has a corresponding Tuxedo Mask transformation. We'll start with the original and then work our way forward. In the original manga, during the Sailor Moon S story arc, Mamoru has a scene where he feels himself imbued with a new power. And it's just 1 page, but he glows naked and transforms into Tuxedo Mask. Now, the manga transformations for the Sailor Senshi were much more abridged compared to what we saw in the anime. So even though this is only like 1 page, 2 panels, it's pretty on par with what we see for the rest of the characters. In the original Sailor Moon anime, in the first season, there's a scene where where Usagi and Mamoru are trapped in an elevator together, and Usagi transforms into Sailor Moon, and then Mamoru turns into Tuxedo Mask. It's when they reveal their secret identities to each other. It's when the first season gets good. And in that moment, Tuxedo Mask has a transformation sequence. He gets a little bit of sparkle and some fairly static twirling, but the best part for me is when he throws his hat and it comes spinning back to him and he holds out his arm. But instead of catching the hat like I expect and like placing it on his own head and then striking a pose, the hat flies right over his hand and slowly lowers onto his head. It just feels like he made a mistake. Like he was real nervous and his transformation, he just kind of like he didn't stick the landing. Also, when I was pulling the clip for this video, I was like, well, I could go and like pull the series up on Hulu and screen record it, but let's just see if it's on YouTube. And it was. And it was the original 90s anime. Or the 90s dub, the American dub. And just hearing Serena's voice sent me back in time.
Cranky old dairy in my dream hunk. This is gonna take some adjusting to.
Especially the robotic way that she says he is Tuxedo Mask.
You are? He is Tuxedo Mask. I don't believe it.
Also, Tuxedo Mask is everyone's dream hunk. Like, you don't want a man who will bring you flowers. You want a man who will throw them at your enemies. The next Tuxedo Mask transformation sequence comes from the 2003 live-action Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon series. And this is my favorite out of all of them. And I'm going to show you just as much as I can of this clip without making the copyright system mad.
Tuxedo Mask! Tuxedo Kamen.
I'm pretty sure this is supposed to be a joke. Like there's the sound effect as he pulls up his pants and we see his underwear and they're kind of silly. There's a way he punches his hand through his sleeve and the extremely serious eye contact that he makes as he pulls on his glove. They're trying to be funny and it works and I love it. And lastly, Sailor Moon Crystal. Since this show was trying to recreate the original manga beat for beat, which I actually liked about it because the original manga was very dark and very weird, like more so than the 90s anime. But because of that, we see that scene from the Sailor Moon S story arc where Mamoru feels imbued with a new power and transforms into Tuxedo Mask. He's not naked and glowing, but he does get a good shampoo ad moment with his head thrown back and his hair flowing. His cape is swirling dramatically. Hey, editing Christina jumping in here. When I was going through the original anime to pull some clips for this video, I found another Tuxedo Mask transformation. Now, it's not really a transformation sequence. There is zero twirling, but there is some glowing. So I'm not really sure if it counts or not, but I still wanted to include it. And there they are, Tuxedo Mask's transformations. This is information you never needed, but now you have it. The thesis statement for every video I've ever made. However, now I'm going to undo everything I just said by pointing out this one scene from the manga. When Tuxedo Mask rescues Sailor Moon, he takes her back to his apartment, and when she wakes up, she sees pieces of his costume on a nearby chair. So really, the original implication is that he does not transform into Tuxedo Mask. This is just an actual tuxedo that he puts on and takes off and hopefully dry cleans. By the way, Halloween 2022 was not the first time that Paris Hilton dressed herself up as Sailor Moon. There was also this baffling tweet from 2019. Even though the stars are blind, if you show me real love, baby, I'll show you mine. I didn't add that music. That was there.
Farewell, until we meet again.